It's not uncommon to believe you have the will to win. Most of us want to come out on top. It's a nice idea, one that really gained acceptance with the believe it and you can achieve it movement that sprang forth from California in the 1980s. It was as if all you had to do was think, believe, and it would come to be because you were attracting the right energy. Well, not so fast, says Michael Canic, a human performance specialist and author of a new book titled Ruthless Consistency. Canic says a lot of people say they have the will to win, but do they have the will to do what is needed to win? In other words, are you willing to work long enough, hard enough, and make the sacrifices to win? Muhammad Ali said, I hated training. Every minute of training I hated it. But I said, don't quit. Suffer now and live the rest of your life as a champion. And Canic agrees. He says, most change initiatives, be they personal, professional, or organizational, fail. Why? Well, the reasons are many, and they are complex, says Canic. Foremost amongst them is a lack of consistency. Canic says, you may think you're consistent, but you can't see yourself the way those around you see you. He says you need a strategy that helps you define what you do, why you do it, how you do it, and then you have to be willing to do the work, the hard work of every day staying on task. I invited human performance expert and author Michael Canic to join me for a conversation that matters about a shift in mindset that can propel anyone in any discipline on a path to consistency.
Conversations That Matter is a partner program of the Centre for Dialogue at Simon Fraser University. The production of this program is made possible thanks to the following and viewers like you. Please become a patron at conversationsthatmatter.tv.
Michael Canic, welcome to Conversations That Matter. You've written a very interesting book, Ruthless Consistency. What do you mean by ruthless? Because it sounds like it's such an aggressive term.
Ruthless is not intended, Stuart, to mean cruel or cold-hearted. It's really meant to focus on unwavering commitment. Are you absolutely committed to whatever you intend to achieve? And it's that, commitment, that unwavering commitment. That's what I mean by ruthless.
So in the book, you talk about many of us have the will to win, but do we have the will to do what needs to be done to win? And I think that this is where the real rub is. Like, are you willing to do the hard work that's necessary to be able to achieve your outcomes?
Well, I think it's easy for leaders to fool themselves into thinking they're more committed than they are. And in fairness, often they lack a benchmark. So it's important to show what real commitment looks like. So I give a number of examples in the book, including the skier Lindsey Vonn, who won more World Cup ski races than any female ski racer in history. And when you look at her training regimen, it was described as maniacal. She would train up to 6 hours a day, 6 days a week, even during the season. Very intense. Actually, even at a young age, they estimated she had skied tens of thousands more slalom gates than any of her competitors. So there's a real commitment. And if you pull back the curtain on anyone who's successful, whether that's in sports, in business, in coaching, entertainment, whatever the field, you'll see all that hard work, all that diligence, that discipline, that effort, getting the person to where they needed to get to. So I think as leaders and organizational leaders, we need to recognize that it's not just, talking the talk and saying, let's go climb this mountain. There really is a lot that has to be done to make it happen.
I've thought about this quite a bit, trying to take that sports analogy and then apply it to business. I watched the U.S. Open just yesterday, and you go, okay, here are two combatants. They're playing in an arena. They both know the rules. They're playing, to exactly the same objective. In business, we don't have those defined barriers. And so then how important is it that if we want to have the kinds of output, let's say, that somebody has, or results that like Lindsey Vonn had, how important is it for us to be able to define what it is we're doing, why we're doing it, and how we're going to do it?
That is absolutely the foundation. It starts with the right focus. So before you create the environment or get your team together, what is the focus? And the focus I define as those three questions. What do we intend to achieve? What must we achieve? Why is it critical? How are we going to do it? And then it's important to continually reinforce that. So, working with leadership teams every month, we're reinforcing what is it we're intending to achieve? Why is this critical? Because it's the why that often provides the impetus for the how. Once we're clear on the why, that provides the impetus. So you have to continually reinforce what, why, and how. Without that, then anything goes. There's a saying that, if you're not clear on your destination, then any road will get you there.
That why am I doing it? I actually find quite an interesting question, because in reading the book, I can't help but look at, well, what do I do? What does my company do? Why am I doing this? And a big part of it is, well, I need to work. I need to make I need to make a living. But that's not enough, especially when you're trying to motivate a team. So how do you then start to build that culture where you and your team can figure out what's the collective why that everybody can subscribe to?
Right. And, I'll start by saying, you think of mission statements. Companies have these mission statements that are often these interminable statements, and, they don't provide, any motivation to people. So we have to get clear in place of a mission statement. I want to get a sense of what do we do that has purpose in it. And let me give you an example. I worked with a company that does restoration work. And what they do, their statement was, well, we restore buildings and possessions that have been damaged by fire or water. Okay, that's what they do. But when we recast that to we help people by restoring buildings and possessions that have been damaged by fire or water. And when you think of buildings that have been damaged, it totally disrupts people's lives. It is traumatic. It turns their lives upside down. We're in the helping people business. We're helping them deal with that trauma, that their lives being turned upside down. That's what they do. And we started instilling that notion. People had a sense of purpose, that they're doing something that's more meaningful, more impactful at a human level, not just, restoring stuff. They're helping people, recover their lives.
So it's not just about making money.
No. Well, and it's funny you mentioned, because there are good examples of when it's not about making money. And a quick example here, Amazon for many years was either unprofitable or marginally profitable. Why? Their goal wasn't to make money, it was to become the de facto place to go online to buy stuff, which meant huge investment in infrastructure and making sure they had access to a wide range of products. They had reliable distribution. They had rock bottom pricing. In the short term, that doesn't lead to money, but as a strategic move, once they establish themselves as the de facto place to go, once they monetize their business with Amazon Prime, then they were able to make money.
That is quite a different philosophy than the one that I was first introduced to when I was beginning my career. I remember taking a program or a course and was told, okay, what's the reason that companies are in business? Well, it's to make money. Apparently, the CEO of General Motors at the time had said, people think we're in the business of making cars. And he said, no, we're not. We're in the business of making money. And if we're not making money making cars, we'll make refrigerators or something else. But when we take a look at what's happened to GM's fortunes over the years with that kind of philosophy in place, it's gone in the opposite direction of that of Amazon. Now, they haven't gone away, but they've had to change their focus as well. And so this goes to your point that it's important to understand what's your motivation behind why you're doing these things.
Exactly. Because if the motivation is just money, as I tell clients, it's very easy to bump up profits. You just cut back on customer service, cut back on training, cut back on R&D, and you will bump up profits, in the short term. Strategically, is that going to lead to a business that continues to thrive? No. So yes, money's important as perhaps one of the measures and one of the indicators. Are we running a successful business? But in and of itself, that can't be the purpose. That can't be the goal.
So there could be somebody right now who's watching and going, okay, Michael, I've got this strategic change initiative that I want to bring into place. I'm going to make it happen. And yet in your book, you say virtually all of those initiatives fail. What are the primary reasons why they don't work? And then let's look at how we make them work.
Right. The number one reason they don't work is because leaders piecemeal things. They think we've got this initiative. Okay, let's get everyone through training. Or let's throw some incentives at this, or let's throw some resources. And what I've learned over time, that's what's more important than anything you do, is everything you do. Everything has to be relentlessly aligned with your stated intentions, every decision, every action, because any mixed message, any single thing, misaligned could undermine everything. It's like when the leader trumpets excellence, but just tolerates poor performance just once, and that mixed message really undermines their efforts. Or we point to the moon, we say, here's what we have to achieve, but we won't fund the rocket to get there. So those mixed messages are what undermine our efforts to change. That's probably the number one cause of change. We don't approach everything, align all the arrows with what we intend to achieve.
You have this interesting little exercise in your book where you ask the reader to take a moment to try and understand why, when they've tried to make changes, they failed. And I really like the fact that you then, in the very next paragraph, call out the reader and say, so did you just jump to this paragraph, or did you actually do the exercise? And, and I go, okay, guilty, because I flashed on quickly what the answer to why many things don't work in my own organization. And, it's me. Because in reading your book, I realized I am inconsistent. I went to my team while starting to do the research, and I said, so am I consistent? And the answer was, well, you're consistently inconsistent. and so this goes to your point, is that you have to be brutally honest with yourself about whether or not you are the source of the problem.
And to be fair, it's not easy. All of us struggle with this. It's hard to be consistent consistently.
Yeah.
At the same time, we need to recognize that if that's the key to success, we have to keep challenging ourselves, not to be perfect, but to continually improve. And in the end, it is you versus you. It's what you as a leader do. So,
okay, so that's developing a mindset to that. But then what are some of the steps that you need to put in place to actually be able to do that?
right. Well, three things: right focus, right environment, right team. And those are the umbrella, those are the key to every change initiative I have ever seen, led, read about, been a part of. It always comes down to those three things. So, what do we mean by the right focus?
Mm-hmm.
Well, being very clear on what we have to achieve, why, and how we're going to do it. So, that's the right focus. Critically, then, the right environment. Have we created the right environment so that our people can perform at their best and execute on that focus? Have we aligned everything in terms of how we've equipped them with skills, with resources, with authority? Do we coach them, give them the feedback and guidance? Do we reinforce them for doing things well? Do we hold them constructively accountable if things don't go well? Have we aligned our organizational policies and processes and structure to make it happen? Have we drawn a clear link between what our purpose is, our goals as a company, and what we expect of individuals? Because that's often where it breaks down. Often we talk about purpose, but it's some ethereal thing floating in the air. We don't explicitly connect the dots between purpose, goals, and what I expect of you as an individual. So in short, all those things have to be aligned to create the right environment, including, are we valuing people?
Mm-hmm.
Are we consistently treating them with respect? Do we demonstrate trust? Do we show that we care about them as individuals? Because when you convey those things, when you value people, then you get engagement as well as performance.
Sorry, I would cut you off there. You were going to finish off your thought.
The final piece is the right team. So right focus, right environment, right team. And people often ask, well, shouldn't you get the right team in place before you create the right environment? My answer is, you often won't know whether you have the right team until you've created the right environment. You might think you have some people issues, but they're actually your issues. You haven't given them a fair chance to succeed. You haven't given them the tools. You haven't given them the information. So create the right environment. Most people will thrive given that. And then the few who aren't a good fit, they'll be exposed as well.
Okay, so that leads perfectly into my next question. You talk a little bit in the book about making sure that everybody's accountable. What about your team, giving them the ability to hold you as the leader accountable as well? Because it's very easy. You start going, oh, I envision this, or I've read that, and you start to move off of what you have stated as being your core objective right now. Do you need to empower your team for them to be able to come back and go, whoa, 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 where are you going with this?
It's not only important, it's essential, and here's why. a leader has to be able to role model that it's okay to be held accountable, that it's okay. Because in general, people don't like being held accountable. They're a little comfortable. But if the leader is open to that, role models, no, I want you to hold me accountable. Tell me where I'm not being consistent. And then you thank people for bringing that to your attention. And you use that as information to change, to learn, to grow. The message you're sending is, oh, we should all want to be held accountable to help us improve and grow. So it's critical that leaders role model, and encourage people to hold them constructively accountable.
That's antithetical to the way that our brains work, though, isn't it? Aren't we always looking for the easy way out? I don't want you to be holding me accountable because that brings about pain, and yet you suggest that we that we embrace that pain. How come?
Well, we're supposed, and that's why, 60, 70% of change initiatives fail because we take the easy way out. But, here's what I've learned about pain. One of my interests outside of work is I climb mountains. I'm a mountaineer. And I can tell you the first time I climbed a big mountain, I remember on summit day, getting up at 2 a.m. because you have to get up early before the sun gets on the ice and thaws and creates avalanche danger. Up at 2 a.m. It's dark. It's really cold. It's really windy. You're at altitude. Your lungs are just gasping for air. Your legs are searing. You're thinking, what am I doing? But then you realize this is how it's supposed to feel. If I'm going to get to the summit, this is how it's supposed to feel. And then you embrace that feeling, you welcome that feeling, it's a familiar feeling. Oh, this is how it's supposed to feel as we're going towards the summit. Well, I think for leaders, for anyone wanting to excel, we have to get used to that feeling, embrace that discomfort, and remind ourselves this is how it's supposed to feel.
I'm going to give a little shout out to my son right now, who's run about 13 or 14 marathons at this point. And early on, as he was running, I'd go out and watch him a fair bit. And I would get down near the finish line, and I would see some people who could see the finish line, and they stopped running. And I asked him, because I'm not a marathoner, I went, why does that happen? And he said, well, because when you run a marathon, after about the 13-mile point, your brain is constantly telling you to quit. It's giving you all sorts of reasons and excuses and everything you can imagine to quit. But he said, when you quit, there'll be a whole bunch of people who go, oh, it's okay, you ran a half marathon, or they'll give you reasons why that was okay. He said, but inside yourself, you know that you didn't achieve your goal. And He said, if you can override that desire to quit and cross the finish line, when you cross that finish line, something inside of you changes. You become a different person. And so when I first came across your book, I went, okay, you're starting to talk about what the mind of a champion looks like. Somebody who does everything that they need to do to win. Not just the will to win, but actually does everything they need to do to win. And this is fundamentally important, isn't it?
Exactly right. And that's a great story, and it captures very well that mindset. But once you persevere, as you said, and hit the finish line, then it reinforces that. It reinforces what you did in that moment of truth. The decision you made when all the things were saying, oh, this is too hard, this is too painful, whatever, it reinforced, no, this is where I have to break through. That's the moment, that's the crux. And that's why I say, in the end, it's you versus you. It's not those external obstacles. It's not the competition. It's not anybody else. In the end, it's you versus you. And if you adopt that mindset, that will help propel you through those difficult times.
Well, for the longest time, I was quite concerned about people who, kind of embrace that idea. If I can conceive it, I can achieve it. Well, no, you can only do that if you actually do the work. And I told you before we started recording that I looked up Muhammad Ali's quote where he said, I hated training. I hated every minute of training, but I told myself, don't quit. Suffer now and forever live as a champion. And that's exactly what he did. Working your way through these things like work. It is hard work. And I noticed in your latest blog, you're saying, right now, don't get used to this being a new normal. Get ready for more pain in relationship to, what's happening with the COVID pandemic right now. Get ready for more pain. Why is it important that we stay on guard for that and continually embrace that as a part of this process?
Yes, and I think a lot of it, again, is psychology. So think of it this way. We've come to the end of summer now. So that euphoria of summer and outside and events, that's gone away. The days are getting shorter, and seasonal affective disorder affects about 20% of the population. We'll be getting into flu season, which will lead to all sorts of anxiety with people thinking, is this COVID or is this just the flu? And then the people who are around them thinking, oh, is that COVID or is that just the flu? So you've got that anxiety, not to mention the back to school anxiety that parents and kids are suffering. And there's still a lot of uncertainty. So if things start going off the rails and they have to shut down schools for those who are going back, that's a whole nother level of anxiety. So there's a whole bunch of things pointing to this is going to be a tough fall and winter. So I'm counseling my clients right now, be prepared for that. Be prepared mentally as much as anything else for that right now. This could be this will likely be a tough fall and winter, but that's okay. That's how it's supposed to feel. And be prepared for it. Develop contingency plans for it, because we're not out of the woods. We're not close to being out of the woods yet.
Before we run out of time, if somebody goes, okay, I'm interested now, how do I get a copy of that book? Where can they go to get that information?
Great. makingstrategyhappen.com. That's our website. That's our business, Making Strategy Happen. Go to makingstrategy.com. You can order it there. You can go to your favorite online retailer, such as Amazon, and get it there as well. Yeah.
Okay. One or two last tips that you want to give somebody right now, just before we wrap up, and say, look, if you want to be ruthlessly consistent, here are the one or two things that I want you to think about before you even get the book.
Sure. Well, 3 quick points, the 3 key principles of the book. Number 1, what's more important than anything you do is everything you do. Everything counts. Number 2, what you do is not as important as what your people experience. They're the ones implementing the change and executing the strategy. Make sure you approach things, see it through their eyes. And number 3, you're not as committed as you think you are or need to be yet, but you can be. You can be, Stuart. You can be.
I keep trying. And maybe just the fact that I keep trying. But there's no doubt that in reading the book, I recognize my own inconsistencies.